Inari is your typical teenage girl, struggling to confess her feelings until she saves a fox cub and gains supernatural powers from a shrine goddess. Supernatural powers from a literal shrine goddess, making her decide to speedrun, changing her entire life forever. But before all that, she takes a shortcut past a shrine, where she spots a fox cub taking damage, stops to heal it and speed walks to school, where she tells her party members Keiko and Chika about the event. But they totally doubt her lore right as Inari gets completely distracted by her crush Tambabashi, explaining to her friends that he's constantly grinding stats, and reveals she even bought him an epic luck charm for his next match. But her lack of focus gets her completely yeeted by a basketball, forcing the coach to make her practice. But her negative aura totally tanks her agility, causing her to trip and accidentally pull down Tambabashi's pants, making the entire lobby laugh as she rage quits to the shrine to cry uncontrollably, until her friends spawn in to comfort her with a classic headbutt, bringing her back online. And when she tries to apologize later, her crush treats her like an enemy mob and constantly evades her, prompting her to follow his path in the afternoon, where she witnesses him meeting Akemi, the top-tier school idol, and watching him blush straight into the shadow realm completely shatters Inari's HP, making her sprint to the shrine crying, heavily nerfing her own self-esteem because she knows he prefers high-stat cute girls. So she grips the luck charm she failed to deliver and desperately summons the gods, prompting 2 fox spirits to spawn and escort her to the main temple, where she meets Lady Yuka, who thanks her for saving the cub and reveals Inari has the rare passive to see spirits. And to reward her, Yuka offers to grant one wish, so Inari immediately demands to shapeshift into Akemi to secure those main character stats, eventually waking up at the shrine later that night. And while walking back to her base, she glances at a window and realizes she fully equipped Akemi's skin. Meanwhile, her mom alerts her party that she's officially missing, making her friends run a search quest where they encounter Tambabashi, aggressively blaming him for dodging Inari all day and inflicting massive guilt damage, while the newly skinned Inari is so starving she's drooling outside a noodle shop, where some random low-level NPCs try to flirt with her, but luckily Tambabashi swoops in to tank the aggro, treating her to soup and lore-dumping about missing Inari and blaming himself for dodging her, and seeing him cry deals massive emotional damage, so she quickly apologizes and dashes back to the temple, where the foxes realize this was her master plan all along, begging to revert to her base skin. But Lady Yuka reveals her magic has a strict cooldown, heavily dropping Inari's morale until the goddess unlocks a brand new cheat code to fix it, feeding her a piece of divine power that permanently upgrades Inari with the ability to shapeshift into literally anyone, restoring her original avatar. And before she logs off, Yuka gifts her the familiar fox cubcon that she originally saved, so she heads out and collides with her party, while her older brother Tauka escorts her back to their spawn point. So the next day she brings the charm for her crush, but he's totally offline from class, prompting her to raid his apartment after school. But to avoid detection, she shapeshifts into his bro Hashimoto before knocking on the door, getting invited in, where he hands her some fan service magazines and explains he skipped the daily grind because his mom is nerfed with a sickness, making Inari realize she barely knows his actual backstory. And while he cooks, she loses control and hugs him, completely creeping him out since she's literally in a dude's body, forcing her to sprint back to the shrine, where Lady Yuka and the minor gods are completely panicking, warning her that the admin Amaterasu is summoning them to the celestial server, where Amaterasu aggressively scolds them and orders Inari to stay in the divine realm to officially class up into a god, because she absorbed Yuka's power. And despite Inari trying to parry the command, Amaterasu is relentless, offering a massive challenge to go an entire 24 hours without using her shape-shifting skill, warning that if she fails the quest, Yuka will be forced into an arranged marriage. So the next day, Inari heads to Tambabashi's match and groups up with Akemi, thinking this no transformation challenge will be an absolute breeze. But the admin Amaterasu actively spawns traps to break her resolve, like putting a balloon out of reach, sticking a baby stroller on stairs, dropping a rogue cat, and even deploying an NPC widower who begs to see his deleted wife again. But Inari tanks the temptation and uses Akemi as a support to avoid shifting, until the admin unleashes even more obstacles, forcing the duo to camp inside the school gym's storage room to recover stamina, which instantly backfires because the heat damage is too high, causing Akemi to pass out. And when Inari tries to exit, she realizes the door is completely admin locked, forcing her to scan the room until she finds a tiny window, making her instantly break the rules and transform into Tambabashi's little brother to squeeze through. And after reverting, she speedruns to the main gym, totally interrupting her crush's match to get a healer, which saves Akemi from taking fatal damage as she recovers from the heat stroke and thanks our MC, proving the rescue mission was a total success. So that evening, Inari pushes past her fear, hands over the luck charm, and wishes him a happy playthrough with Akemi since she assumes she's getting permanently banned to the celestial realm. Later boarding the train to the divine server while leaking tears and saying a mental goodbye. But upon arriving, Yuka actually apologizes for dragging her into this messy questline, and in a massive plot twist, Amaterasu announces that Yuka actually passed the hidden test, explaining that if the goddess had blamed the human, they both would have been deleted, so Inari is completely free to respawn on Earth. Meaning the next day at school, she catches Akemi and Tambabashi chatting, where Akemi finally drops her answer, rejecting his romance route and instead accepting the coach's invite to be the team's manager, allowing Tambabashi to thank Inari for the epic item drop, showing he actually equipped the charm to his bag, making her insanely happy as she dashes to the shrine, where she bumps foreheads with Yuka, feeling a massive stat boost and realizing the goddess has been secretly carrying her all along, until her brother Tauka suddenly clips into the scene, forcefully separating them and warning the deity, aggressively scolding his sister and claiming Yuka is planning a sacrifice event, making Inari literally laugh out loud as they walk away, leaving the goddess completely stunned since normal humans shouldn't have the vision stat to see her, until her memory banks restore a flashback of a lost little Inari being escorted to her brother, who could somehow actually see her character model, and suddenly sensing a familiar aggro aura, Yuka instantly fast travels away from the shrine, leading to the next day where a handsome NPC tries to initiate dialogue with Inari, but she speedruns to the bathroom, only to step out and bump into herself because the guy actually shapeshifted, meaning the fake Inari successfully steals her identity and infiltrates the classroom, forcing the real MC to transform into the vice principal to confront the imposter. But the interrogation gets interrupted when her party members show up to hand the fake Inari her gym equipment, completely blocking the real Inari from the girls' locker room since she's stuck in a male avatar, allowing the imposter to completely steal the spotlight by showing off way better agility and charisma stats than the original. Meanwhile, back at base, Tauka is grinding his manga skills when he hears a glitch in the attic, finding Yuka sleeping and instantly hitting her with a forbidden catching technique. While back at school, the fake Inari drops the disguise, revealing himself as Yuka's brother Otoshi, the god of agriculture who is intensely obsessed with his sister. And jumping back to the house, Yuka lore dumps that she's literally dodging her brother's insane stalker behavior, choosing to camp in the attic to avoid his party invites. But Tauka aggressively tells her to log off and leave, though Yuka gets distracted by his console and begs to start a co-op gaming session. Jumping back to the school, Tambabashi walks in on Otoshi and Inari way too close, getting the completely wrong idea, forcing her to frantically claim Otoshi is just a random friend of her brother's. And after the chaos, they walk to the celestial planes, where low-ranking mobs start harassing Inari because of her divine aura, until a pink-haired goddess named Mia casts an intimidation spell to back them off, introducing herself as the goddess of commerce and acting surprisingly chill with our MC. While back at Inari's spawn point, Tauka finds Yuka crashed in his bed, heavily sleep-talking about his sister, so he wakes her up demanding the full patch notes on Inari, and when she lags out, he literally pins her to the bed to force an answer, inflicting massive embarrassment damage that makes her teleport out of the house. Jumping back to the divine server, Mia explains that out of all the shrine gods, Yuka is the only one who actually camps on Earth to dodge the endless marriage requests from high-tier gods seeking her power, choosing absolute isolation until Mia introduced her to human video games, turning her into a complete hardcore gamer. And when Inari finally enters the main party hall, the lower gods keep spamming requests to see her powers, annoying her so much she just shifts into Yuka. But her mana completely overflows, and Amaterasu has to step in to stop the server crash, causing the real Yuka to lose massive HP back on Earth. Luckily, Tauka catches her mid-fall at the shrine while delivering a daily offering for his mom, shoving the consumable into her mouth and aggressively demanding she explain the Inari situation, but she just deflects with a request to play more video games and flies off, ending with Amaterasu explaining that Yuka's power is completely incompatible with a human vessel, causing the random critical failures, warning Inari that she needs to master her mana control so she can eventually extract the divine energy and trade it back to Yuka, meaning she has to return to her home server and start a massive training arc to see how long she can hold a basic transformation. Whenever you're ready, I can queue up and process the next 10-minute batch for you. Our MC tries to use her new abilities to shapeshift into her mom, but completely fails the stealth check and gets busted by Tuka like a clueless NPC. And luckily he falls for the illusion until he walks downstairs and spots his actual parents in the kitchen, making him claim his sister has divine powers, which his parents just completely laugh off, prompting Tauka to launch a stealth investigation by literally camping on a futon in her room to monitor her stats. So days later, Inari complains to Yuka about her brother's stalker mode, leading Kon to suggest she just trade the powers back to Yuka, which totally tanks Inari's mood since losing her magic means permanently losing her goddess friend, making Lady Yuka gently advise her to return to her normal NPC life and focus on her romance route with Tambabashi at the upcoming festival, where the next day Inari equips a top-tier yukata and meets up with Akemi, who is officially in her party now as they totally geek out over shoujo manga lore, with Inari hyping up the classic scene where the male lead tanks the hit for the main girl, until they suddenly sense massive aggro from behind, prompting Keiko to literally spawn out of nowhere and yeet Otoshi into a Beyblade spin just as he tries to jump scare Inari, and Keiko stealthily drags his HP to 0 while calming down a panicked Akemi. So when Inari respawns, she spots Akemi blushing hard at Keiko before the whole squad regroups with Chika to raid the festival stalls, where Akemi straight up interrogates Inari about her crush on Tambabashi, triggering a massive red blush that completely exposes her secret. And perfectly on cue, Tambabashi spawns with his family, prompting Akemi to massively buff her wingman stats and shove Inari straight into the romance mission, forcing Inari to fake a random encounter, pretending she was just casually exploring the map. But his mom reads the room like a pro and immediately logs off to give them space, providing an absolute god-tier assist as the duo starts traversing the festival minigames. Meanwhile, Keiko literally aimbots a shooting game to win a teddy bear, but before Akemi can claim the loot, Keiko declares she's giving it to Inari, completely nerfing Akemi's mood, while Tambabashi lands a critical hit on Inari by calling her yukata skin cute, dealing so much emotional damage that she gets distracted and loses his character model in the massive mob. But luckily he realizes his party member is missing and grabs her hand to lock in the escort mission, maxing out Inari's happiness meter, sending a massive joy buff all the way to Yuka, who is spectating them from the shrine, completely unsurprised to see Tauka running a stealth stalker build behind his sister, until Otoshi suddenly spawns and tackles Yuka with a hug, thanking her for dropping the server barrier, which makes Yuka realize her admin powers are actually getting massively nerfed. Jumping back to our main duo who are crossing a legendary couple's bridge, where Inari takes fall damage and sprains her ankle, forcing Tambabashi to carry her on his back to a safe zone, making her internally celebrate that he can't see her HP bar turning bright red, as she comments that his shoulder stats have massively leveled up since the last time he carried her, and when he acts surprised that she noticed his physical buffs, she absolutely rizzes him up by declaring she's always spectating him, scoring a critical blush. Meanwhile, Yuka literally ties Otoshi to a light post because the dude is an absolute server menace, prompting Tauka to interrogate her about transferring powers to Inari, forcing her to lie that she only unlocked Inari's vision stats to see gods, which Tauka actually buys, right before Otoshi aggressively scolds his sister for partying up with humans whose playthroughs are basically a speedrun compared to gods. But Yuka defends herself, saying she just wants to leech a little of their happiness buff. And later, while Inari uses a towel to heal her feet, her entire squad regroups, maxing out her joy meter, making her internally thank Yuka for unlocking this entire storyline and vowing to help the goddess secure her own happy ending. So a few patches later, Inari visits the shrine to brag about her upcoming Summer Beach episode DLC with her friends and family. And the second they spawn on the sand, Akemi and Keiko pull the aggro of some typical musclehead NPCs, but Keiko activates pure anime logic and flexes her overpowered strength stats to instantly terrify them away, while Chika, feeling totally nerfed around Akemi, decides to glue herself to Inari, generating so much wholesome energy that Yuka literally senses the vibe check all the way from her shrine, though Yuka is still taking mental damage from her brother's toxic words, completely depressing her, which Tauka notices since he skipped the beach raid to stay home. Jumping back to the ocean level, Inari spots that Chika's morale is completely drained, prompting Chika to confess that she actually heavily dislikes Akemi joining their party. And simultaneously, Akemi vents to Keiko about Chika's hostility, making Keiko lord up that Chika's social stats are just super low, and she needs a long cooldown to accept new party members, assuring her that Inari's op friendship passive will eventually fix the squad dynamic, which triggers some massive insecurity debuffs for Akemi, though she keeps her mic muted. And when night falls, Inari is hyped to explore their cabin base, but the atmosphere is incredibly toxic since Chika and Akemi are practically holding a cold war while Keiko is just AFK from sleepiness. So Inari tries to start a TV watch party, and while Akemi runs a fetch quest for drinks, the MC begs Chika to drop the aggro and vibe with Akemi, but Chika completely rejects the diplomacy, blaming Inari for ruining their classic trio setup, and wishing they could just roll back the server too when it was just the three of them, which actually enrages Inari, prompting her to storm out and track down Akemi, who currently just triggered a random encounter with that same toxic NPC trying to harass her, forcing Inari to shapeshift into Keiko's skin to absolutely terrify the mob away. And after the scrub despawns, Akemi tackles Inari with a crying hug, totally convinced she's the real Keiko as they slowly navigate back to base. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, Chika's crying over hurting Inari accidentally cancels Keiko's sleep mode, making Keiko wake up and demand she give Akemi a fair trial, leading Chika to trauma dump that she's terrified of getting permanently benched from the squad, though Keiko guarantees Inari's loyalty stats are way too high for that. Jumping back outside, Inari advises Akemi to just wait out Chika's cooldown timer, but right before they hit the cabin door, Kon sends a frantic ping reminding Inari she needs to disable her disguise, so the MC makes a massive tactical retreat, faking a bathroom emergency to break line of sight, equipping her default skin a few minutes later, and lying to Akemi that she just bumped into the real Keiko who was already heading back. A dialogue choice that instantly triggers an absolute disaster as Akemi bursts into tears, convinced that Keiko is actively dodging her after the emotional hug, completely shattering her HP since she thought they were finally bonding, and trauma dumps that her social skill tree is totally empty because her parents are perma-AFK, making her isolate herself by default. And despite Inari desperately trying to cast healing spells, Akemi just cries harder, admitting she's insanely jealous that even Keiko only talks about Inari, to the point where Akemi literally wishes she could steal Inari's stats, a confession that accidentally triggers Inari's op magic to spiral out of control, sending shockwaves all the way to Yuka's shrine. But Kon realizes the MC is about to permanently alter Akemi's game file and aggressively blocks the spell, forcing Inari to accept she can't use admin commands to fix this and opts for the pure honesty dialogue option, confessing that she actually wants to steal Akemi's stats too, praising her top-tier grades, massive popularity with boys and flawless RNG, pointing out they're both just jealous of each other's build, but the massive perk of partying up is that they can tank the emotional damage together, completely restoring Akemi's morale as she proudly accepts the friend request, which naturally stabilizes Inari's mana pool and instantly cures Yuka's long-distance debuff. And as the girls march back to base, they intercept Chika and Keiko, who had launched a search party to find the laggy players, resulting in a massive synchronized apology from Chika, Inari and Akemi, with Chika finally dropping her aggro and unlocking the nickname feature for Akemi, letting the squad completely heal their bonds with laughter, an outcome that makes Inari's spectating parents incredibly happy, while the mom patches a call through to Tauka, confirming they'll fast travel back the next evening, forcing Tauka to instantly drop the call because his danger sense spikes, only to realize it's literally just Yuka stealthing behind him, trailing him like an absolute hardcore stalker and begging to launch a co-op gaming session, but he completely rejects the invite, heavily nerfing her mood. So feeling guilty, he compromises and allows her to raid his house tomorrow before the family respawns, meaning the very next day, Yuka speedruns to his front door at lightning speed, giving him zero chance to block the entry. Meanwhile, back at the beach level, the girls are farming a barbecue event when Inari complains she wants to return to the school map, prompting Akemi to troll her that she just wants to spectate Tambabashi, a direct hit that Inari desperately denies, claiming she actually just wants to grind the upcoming Wisteria School Festival, an event Keiko and Chika consider total filler, but Akemi finds the lore interesting and officially accepts the quest invite. Right before they all watch Keiko absolutely obliterate Inari's dad in a badminton 1v1, making Akemi confess she's completely falling for Keiko's op cool stats, which Chika massively supports because she's not just a casual, but an absolute hardcore otaku who mains girls love manga, fully endorsing the ship. And before logging off from the beach, the squad raids the souvenir shop where Chika gifts Keiko a matching keychain, while Inari scans for epic loot to give Yuka, with Kon assuring her the goddess will blindly accept any item drop she provides. Meanwhile, back at the house, Yuka is absolutely dominating Tauka in video games until he rage quits from losing and tells her to play solo, leading her to browse his family photo albums and get totally hit with the heavy lore that human playthroughs are just tragically short, prompting her to gently grab Tauka's hand, triggering a flashback to their first encounter 10 patches ago, recalling how he got completely lost in the shrine's forest map, forcing her to equip a human skin just to escort him back to the safe zone. And after the nostalgia trip, she enters sleep mode, leaving Tauka to grind some cooking stats while waiting for the party to return. And the second they spawn in, he warns Inari about the VIP guest upstairs, but when Inari catches Yuka half asleep with her armor completely unequipped, she instantly accuses her brother of triggering an illegal adult scene, which he aggressively parries, claiming he was just stuck playing the babysitter minigame while she was off enjoying the beach DLC. So later Inari drags Yuka to her room and trades her a legendary bottle of sake as a quest reward, making Yuka demand the full playthrough review, which Inari provides, carefully censoring the entire divine power glitch to prevent the goddess from taking worry damage. Fast forward a few days where the school RNG decides the festival play rolls, and Inari hits the absolute jackpot, rolling the main heroine slot right next to Tambabashi's male lead, making her speedrun to the shrine to brag to Yuka, who drops a massive luck buff on her. But right after, Mia teleports in holding a toxic letter from Yuka's mom, aggressively spamming her with mandatory arranged marriage quests, prompting Mia to advise her to just party up with whatever god she actually enjoys gaming with, though seeing Yuka panic makes it obvious that Tauka is the only player on her mind. And as the days tick down, Inari and Tambabashi flawlessly grind their dialogue practice until the director Hashimoto drops a massive patch note that he added a kissing scene, putting the duo in absolute shock, sending Inari's imagination into complete overdrive until she catches Otoshi rizzing up random NPC girls and aggressively scolds him, a chaotic interaction that Tambabashi spectates, completely misunderstanding their relationship stats. Meanwhile, Tauka randomly spawns at the shrine to visit Yuka, where she trauma dumps about the forced marriage raid set by her mom and asks for his human perspective on romance, forcing him into a massive yapping session, which instantly devolves into a massive PvP argument, causing them to rage quit in opposite directions. And later that night, while Inari grinds her lines, Kon congratulates her for using admin commands to steal the protagonist role, effectively dumping a bucket of ice water on her hype, making her realize her entire run is technically hacked, meaning the next day during co-op practice, she keeps dropping her combo and forgetting lines, making Tambabashi assume she's terrified of the romance event, so he offers to completely patch the kissing scene out of the script. Whenever you're ready, I can queue up and process the 20 to 30 minute batch for you. Inari thinks she's catching a hard rejection, but soon realizes the other NPC girls stopped swarming Tambaba. Turns out our girl has been unconsciously using her op powers to zone out the competition. So later she completely fumbles her lines again and tries to rage quit the play out of pure guilt. But Tambabashi assumes she's just distracted by a secret boyfriend, earning him a massive scolding from Akemi for being a total blockhead, which completely shocks Keiko and Chika since Akemi's rage meter is usually locked, while Tambabashi just breathes a massive sigh of relief learning Inari is actually running solo. Meanwhile, up on the roof, Inari tries to complete the good karma quest of delivering Momoyama's love letter to Tambabashi, but a random gust of wind completely yeets the item away, and Kon confirms Inari's subconscious magic actually spawned the wind, inflicting so much guilt damage on Inari that Yuka literally feels her HP dropping from the shrine, forcing Inari to shapeshift into Momoyama's skin to manually deliver the confession to Tambabashi, but the dude reads the minimap perfectly and intercepts her on the roof since he was actively searching for the real Inari. So she shoots her shot and confesses while masked as Momoyama, but he instantly parries the feelings and completely questions her definition of romance, making Inari lore dump that love is basically a hardcore obsession, where your entire CPU is dedicated to learning everything about that one specific player, a speech that finally unlocks Tambabashi's true feelings for the MC. And after logging off from the roof, Inari tracks down Momoyama to drop the bad news that Tambabashi read the letter and fully rejected the romance route. But Momoyama just tanks the rejection like an absolute champ and instantly resets her aggro. Fast forward a few days to the festival launch, where Inari equips the backstage support role, and that night she visits the shrine to drop a goodbye to Yuka, who's fast traveling to Izumo, with the goddess assuring Inari that even if she gets forced into an arranged co-op marriage, they can still party up because Inari still holds her admin powers. But Tauka accidentally eavesdrops on the entire voice chat and aggressively accuses Yuka of lying about the power transfer, though Yuka completely clips into the divine train to Izumo before she can even defend herself, meaning 3 days later, Tauka's rage meter is still maxed out, so he initiates a rescue mission to Izumo and drags Inari along for the raid, where they instantly locate Yuka, standing next to her absolutely terrifying raid boss Mother Kamu, a toxic hag who hates seeing her daughter party up with casuals, and her aggro spikes even higher when Otoshi spawns in to sabotage Yuka's dates, forcing Kamu to order Otoshi to permanently delete the humans from the lobby. But safely inside a cafe, Otoshi leaks the admin logs, explaining Kamu is only forcing this marriage to flex on a rival goddess whose daughter is also tying the knot, which absolutely disgusts Inari, who can't fathom a mother using her own kid for competitive server ranking. So she forms a troll squad with Otoshi to completely ruin the dates, while Tauka plays the fake edgy Tsundia role, lying that he doesn't care about the quest and walking away. So Otoshi and Inari infiltrate the temple where Kamu is forcing Yuka to meet a literal bug god, but a random talking crow intercepts Otoshi and yeets him out of the instant, leaving Inari completely solo until she spots Yuka leaving to farm flowers, allowing the MC to shapeshift into Yuka's exact skin despite Kon spamming warning notifications, a transformation that immediately inflicts massive debuffs on the real Yuka, while Inari confidently storms the boss room and tells Kamu she refuses to marry an insect, instantly triggering Kamu's rage mode, making her deploy a squad of goons to hunt down Inari and Tauka, perfectly calculating that the humans are corrupting her daughter's dialogue options. Meanwhile, Tauka notices his wanted level just spiked, so he speedruns away from the mobs until he literally trips over Yuka's passed-out character model. And when she reboots, she finally drops the entire tragic lore about Inari's divine powers, revealing that every single time Inari activates a transformation, Yuka's max HP permanently drops, and since she's currently wearing a goddess skin, Inari might actually drain Yuka's entire mana pool and permanently replace her on the server, a truth bomb that shatters Tauka's stoic armor as Yuka starts crying that her save file is about to be completely deleted, prompting Tauka to drop his Tsundia act, pull her into a desperate hug, and vow to fix the corrupted code together since they're true party members. And once her panic debuff clears, they sprint off to locate Inari, who is currently back in her base skin, playing stealth to dodge Kamu's mobs until she gets discovered by a massive blonde-haired Chad god, who flexes his title as Master Susanoo, Yuka's actual father, prompting Inari to beg him to act like a real admin and cancel Yuka's forced marriage event. But he completely rejects the quest unless she can pass a persuasion check. And perfectly on cue, Kamu and a massive horde of low-tier gods swarm the area, aggressively demanding Inari drop Yuka's powers, which instantly fills Inari's rage meter, making her completely roast Kamu for having 0 empathy stats, while aggressively flaming the minor gods for trying to steal Yuka's op powers without grinding for it themselves, calling them absolute leeches, a legendary trash talk session that Tauka and Yuka arrive just in time to witness. And Master Susanoo is so hyped by Inari's flawless speech that he officially patches the arranged dates out of the game, throwing up a massive victory pose that instantly turns Kamu into a blushing mess, making her tackle him with a hug while Amaterasu praises her little brother's op cuteness stats. And with the server stabilized, Inari and Tauka drop their goodbyes to Yuka, who's forced to camp in Izumo for a 30-day cooldown. But once the humans log off, Amaterasu interrogates Yuka on her power recovery progress, forcing Yuka to confess that when Inari's guilt peaked, her body actually started rejecting the admin powers, almost triggering a full refund, a terrifying glitch that forces Amaterasu to lock Yuka inside a mountain for mandatory divine therapy, explaining to a confused Susanoo that Yuka has been co-oping with a human for way too long and desperately needs to run solo to reboot her own corrupted soul. Fast forward an entire month where Inari is still faithfully logging into the shrine, and despite the Fox NPCs confirming Yuka is still offline, Inari's morale stays high because she's successfully grinding her romance route with Tambabashi, especially when Hashimoto randomly interrogates Tambabashi about his feelings for Inari, causing the dude to blush like a completely clueless noob, a scene Momoyama secretly spectates, giving her the courage to formally apologize to Tambabashi for initiating the love letter event. But Tambabashi completely denies the law, stating Inari never delivered any item and just confessed directly, inflicting the ultimate betrayal damage on Momiyama, who immediately cries to her party that Inari totally deleted her quest item. And that afternoon, Inari visits Tauka's room to report Yuka's prolonged offline status, which just spikes his aggro because he literally hasn't stopped analyzing her since the Izumo raid. Meaning the next day when Inari's class runs a cleaning quest at the shrine, Tambabashi uses the opening to pass her a premium luck charm. A wholesome drop that gets fully spectated by Momiyama, who's seething with pure rage. So when Chika isolates herself to clean, the squad quickly realizes they've been completely shadowbanned by all the other NPC girls. A massive disrespect that instantly fills Keiko's rage meter, forcing an NPC to cry, but it's Akemi's maxed out charisma stats that actually forces the mob to leak the intel, revealing that Kanjetsu is the toxic raid leader threatening everyone to block Inari's party. So Inari speedruns to confront the boss, where Kanjetsu aggressively accuses her of deleting Momiyama's letter just to hog Tambabashi's exp for herself. And despite Inari trying to explain that the wind literally RNG'd the letter away, the toxic mob accuses her of being a dirty player only interested in stealing romance routes, pushing Chika's patience to the limit. But Kanjetsu's strength stats are way higher, allowing her to brutally shove Chika to the ground and inflict physical damage, which acts as the ultimate trigger, awakening pure hatred in Inari's code for the very first time, causing her admin powers to completely overload and literally shake the entire Tokyo server. And just as she's about to unleash a catastrophic earthquake spell, Yuka feels the mana spike and forcefully rips a crack in her mountain prison, desperately manual overriding Inari's chaotic energy, a massive flex that sends shockwaves through the entire celestial plane, successfully snapping Inari back to reality and cancelling the disaster event. And as the teachers initiate emergency evacuation protocols, Inari still chooses the high honor path by helping Kanjetsu to safety. And once the entire lobby regroups, Momiyama admits she actually knows the truth about Kanjetsu's toxic strat and drops an apology. But Inari stays honest and confesses she did technically lose the item, prompting Momiyama to completely forgive her, meaning this entire PvP drama was absolute filler. And despite Kanjetsu refusing to apologize, since she has 0 fear stats against Keiko, Akemi deploys her lethal sweet voice skill, completely breaking Kanjetsu's poise and forcing a full public apology, until Tauka suddenly respawns at the shrine, aggressively interrogating Inari if her powers caused the server-wide earthquake, and when she casually claims Yuka's got her back, he completely shatters her reality by dropping the ultimate law bomb, explaining that every single time she spams a spell, she literally drains Yuka's life force, meaning the goddess is currently facing permanent deletion. Jumping to the mountain where Yuka's character model is actively disintegrating, and though Inari has no minimap data to reach her, Kon unleashes a divine howl that spawns a path of blue flames, letting Inari speedrun to the rescue like an absolute op hero. And in a legendary moment, every single Fox NPC across the map answers Kon's summon, grouping up to teleport Inari straight into the celestial plane where Otoshi has been violently spamming attacks to break the mountain's admin seals. While inside, Yuka is just moments away from 0 HP, right as Inari arrives and literally tries to pry the mountain apart with her bare hands like she's farming a boss. While Yuka's parents are forced to spectate the raid from Amaterasu's throne room without being able to assist. But Inari refuses to stop grinding the obstacle, getting a massive assist from the wolf spirits and Otoshi who push until the hitbox finally cracks, giving them a visual on Yuka, who is so transparent she drops her final goodbye dialogue, apologizing for failing her escort mission. But that just maxes out Inari's determination, making her aggressively rip into the crack even harder. A display of pure willpower that forces Susanoo to look at Amaterasu and demand an override, allowing him to literally blow the mountain wide open, letting Inari sprint in for a desperate hug, but she literally clips straight through Yuka's fading character model, crying her eyes out and screaming at the goddess for hiding the fatal HP drain mechanic. But Yuka counters that she just didn't want to inflict worry damage, perfectly mirroring how Inari hid her own mana control glitches for the exact same reason. A realization that actually makes Inari smile because their friendship stats are perfectly balanced. So Inari initiates the final power transfer, while Yuka promises to permanently spectate her run from the divine realm, even as Kon bawls his eyes out realizing he's getting banned from the human server too. And as the admin powers finally refund to Yuka, They hold hands, successfully stabilizing the goddess's code, giving Inari the chance to drop a massive thank you for the magical carry, crediting the op powers for letting her unlock Tambabashi's route and build her ultimate squad. But the goddess drops the realist wisdom, stating magic literally can't alter player emotions, and everything she achieved was purely because of her own maxed-out determination. So they share their final goodbyes, and the second their hands separate, Inari is instantly teleported back to her spawn point, where her entire party and Tambabashi are nervously waiting for the raid results. And seeing her character model completely covered in damage, they panic asking if she's safe, but she just bursts into happy tears confirming her HP is totally fine, because that's just the classic anime ending. While back in the Celestial Plane, Amaterasu drops the final philosophical question, asking Yuka if she finally understands why cross-server parties between humans and gods are permanently banned. You said #role and objective. Yuka claps back saying human lore is actually top tier, and begs to stay on the server to keep observing, all because she straight up fell in love with a human. So Amaterasu just drops a smirk, realizing that high-tier rascals never actually learn how to follow the rules. Meanwhile, Inari and Tauka stop by the shrine to drop a daily offering, and seeing Tambabashi waiting for her makes her sense a wholesome presence, confirming her MC intuition that Yuka is still spectating her run, and she's 100% correct even if her vision stat is nerfed. Just as we see Yuka standing right by Tauka's side, watching over their party